Hey, looks like we are live. So I'm just always like to double check on LinkedIn and make sure we are showing up and is not gone to some new created event. So we'll just give it a couple of seconds. And if people are already joining us, I want to just say hi. Thanks for joining us. Tell us what sort of a clinician you are, where you're joining us from. And if you've already got questions for Junaid, anything not about his beard, feel free to put that in the comments and I'll make sure to ask him these questions at the end of our episode. If you're new to the Clinician Founder Podcast, welcome and thank you for tuning in. You can find this at your favorite podcast streaming platform as well. There we are. I can see our faces on LinkedIn, so I'm happy with that. And people will probably start coming in. The funny thing is, all of my podcasts so far in this season have happened around this time. Like for some reason, this works for most founders. I've got the next few coming up at a slightly different time, but it's interesting. Sort of lunch hour, so people tend to tune in a little bit after 12. But a lot of people also watch this in the evening around 4 or 5 after the podcast happens. So that's super exciting. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us and making sure that all our tech is looking good so far. And yeah, I'll take us into our intro section. So, welcome to episode 28 of the Clinician Founder Podcast, where it's episode 29 this time. My bad. So, welcome to episode 29 of the Clinician Founder Podcast, where we explore how clinicians are building expert led, mission driven ventures that are reshaping healthcare from the inside out. I'm your host, Dr. Shubhendu Kulshreshtha, an executive coach and emergency physician, helping clinicians like you become founders so that medicine could be your side hustle. I host a Clinician Founder Launchpad program for those that are really serious about more income, time, and freedom by making a positive change in the world around them and are looking for a community, some accountability, and structures that work. Today's guest is Dr. Junaid Hussain, a practicing GP and a health tech strategist who's worked in the intersection of clinical care and technology, supporting both companies and healthcare providers to innovate better. He's also helped set up primary care training programs abroad and build communities that give clinicians a real voice in the future of healthcare. Today, we're going to explore his role as a founder of Health Collider and of UK's largest innovation and healthcare community for doctors. We'll dive into what made a simple WhatsApp group snowball into over 600 members in just 3 days, the role LinkedIn played in creating opportunities, what innovators in healthcare must get right in 2025, 26. And yes, that probably means talking a bit about AI and what it actually takes to create a space where innovation thrives. If you're curious about breaking into health tech, building community, or learning from real world experiments, this episode will give you clarity and direction. Oh, and like I mentioned, if you haven't already, follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Let's dive into it. Thanks so much for being here today with me, Junaid. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me, Shub. Honestly, it's always a pleasure to join you and to talk with you.
Yeah,
And
always a pleasure.
everybody as well who's watching.
Yeah. Great conversations. I can see we've got 8 people watching us already on LinkedIn. And so thanks and leave us your questions for Junaid and tune in and chime in whenever you'd like to say something. It really makes a difference to the podcast experience. Junaid, I love having conversations with you, and every time I speak to you, we're doing something new, we're doing something different, we're doing something innovative, and I absolutely love it. I mean, you've been a really busy man in the last 6 to 8 months or so. I guess for our listeners, take us through who Dr. Junaid Hussain is, and what are all the pots you've got your fingers in?
Too many pies. I'm a Junaid. I'm a GP. For those who are outside the UK, often known as a family medicine consultant. And by background, I've been a doctor since 2010. I completed my primary care training in 2015. I spent about a year. That was in Manchester. I spent about a year and a bit in the region, Manchester, Liverpool, primarily working in urgent care and care of the elderly, actually. Then I went abroad in 2016 to Saudi Arabia, and I was invited by the Ministry of Health there to a city called Ha'il, which is in the north of Saudi Arabia, for those who don't know. A small desert city, and I was tasked with setting up the first primary care training program in the city or in the whole sort of region, which was an amazing experience. I didn't expect that a year or so after completing my family medicine training, my GP training, but it was a really amazing experience. By the time I left the program, we had 4 years of trainees across. 32 trainees across 4 years, and that was to serve a city with the size of 300,000 people. So
Wow.
they didn't have their own training program at that point. Then I moved for a short period of time to Jeddah, to the private sector in Saudi Arabia. For personal reasons, I had to come back to the UK. I came back right before COVID. Then I worked in ordinary primary care for about a year or two and started transitioning back into urgent care, which seems to be the area that I enjoy the most.
Mm.
So I work as what we call an out of hours GP. Whilst I was in Saudi Arabia, I began an MBA with a focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. And I started to alongside my experiences in Saudi Arabia, alongside my experiences in Saudi Arabia, I started to utilize some of the skills that I obtained from that. I started getting involved more in health technology, innovation accelerators, supporting organizations that I work with in healthcare, and that led to sort of various different opportunities. So that's sort of where I am at the moment. I'm still a primary care doctor. I still work in urgent care, and I'm now much more involved in healthcare innovation, which is becoming more than a side hustle at the moment. It's really it's taking off, and it's dynamic and very interesting, and I really enjoy it.
Wow, that's really cool. What I'm taking away from all of that is that you've had more change than most people have in a lifetime, and you're very comfortable with it. And you're not afraid to kind of do new things, try new things, and really make a difference. Tell us a little bit about Health Collider. What is it, and what are you hoping to achieve?
Because Health Collide is a company that spun out of our community, which we'll probably talk about in shortly. So it's um, it's a company that were made by myself and a couple of other doctors. One's an ex-doctor, now a software engineer, and one's a GP in Scotland. And we help health technology and innovative healthcare companies to find the right areas within healthcare to be able to penetrate the market better. So, for example, that may be through helping them to find sites for research that are appropriate for them. It might be obtaining pilots for them. It might be ways in which we can help them be procured. The key difference for me is, and the key important thing for me is that it's not just any technology. I think as clinicians, sometimes we're on the receiving end of tools that we use that have been procured by somebody else that are not
Mm.
always that fit for purpose. You might know what I'm talking about. Sometimes
Mm.
electronic patient records, sometimes various things just don't feel right, and we just use them because we've been told, here it is, use it. So one of the fundamental aims of Health Collide is making sure that the technology that we help, or the companies that we help support and their products are safe, are very useful, and are, in our opinions, we've sort of screened them, are ones that we think will be very, very impactful. And these are often companies or organizations that are not, that are quite under the radar and possibly at risk sometimes, as can happen in innovation, a risk of closing down because no one buys the products, because
Mm.
get that market penetration, not be able to get that opportunity that other companies, bigger companies, to say, are able to get. So it's allowing and creating avenues for innovation to come into healthcare in an easier way.
That's amazing. I mean, we know healthcare is changing rapidly, and technology never manages to reach the final end user and patient's benefits fast enough. So, this is a really important and growing space. And what I'm hearing as well is that you've got your experience, you've got another GP, you've got some software and tech experience, and it's really the people that build the company and derive value to it. I want to kind of just go back and think about when for you was the first time that you kind of came across your strengths or your abilities to really make this change, and what made you say like, oh, this is the space I got to lean into, I just got to do things that other people aren't doing.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I always seem to mention this in every single talk I give, but I have ADHD. So that means that I struggle sometimes to not focus. My focus isn't too bad, but I struggle to stay still in one place, and that's true for healthcare more broadly. I find I get bored quite quickly. Once I've
Mm.
picked up a routine, once I've realized how easy things are, once you start, you see patients, back pain, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z. It becomes algorithmic, and it
Mm.
becomes sort of a bit stagnant. So when healthcare technology came along, and to be honest, I want to give a shout out to James Summeru from the Health Tech podcast. When I started listening to his podcast, and alongside that, combining it with my experiences and so on, I started realizing that, hold on, innovation is a space where you can never get bored. Everything is always new. you know, there's always things that are changing, and it aligns perfectly with who I am. It aligns perfectly with my ADHD. So I'm
Mm.
able to stay focused in a way in that everything is new, everything's coming. You know, there's never an end to innovation.
Yeah.
Uh, that's the really cool part. So I can continue chasing my tail like you do in ADHD sometimes, but it's yeah. I make fun of it, but it's no, it's really cool. That it's that allowed me to realize that health technology innovation is what I want to be in, because
Okay.
it's the new, the breadth, the depth, and everything is just so, it's so cool. Everything you can
Mm.
play with tools that, you know, it's like a doctor's PlayStation. You get to play with new tools, and really get to use the best of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think, um, like me, you probably had the same experience that doing something else on the side makes your clinical work a lot better. And the funny thing is, you're in urgent care and I'm in emergency medicine, and these are fields where every patient is kind of different, and every patient is quite exciting. And then even then, you kind of hit a plateau in terms of things becoming algorithmic, getting used to seeing the same thing over and over again, and just pure volumes. And I think there's an element of exercising the creator side of things, where I think, for me, the other thing I wanted to do is become a chef, and it's like, oh, they're quite similar in many ways, but emergency medicine is always about restoring health, whereas becoming a chef or doing something like an entrepreneur is always about creating new things and making it better. So I'm hearing that in your story as well, and definitely resonate so much with it.
Yeah, it's really, the way you put it
Yeah.
really makes a lot of sense, for sure.
Yeah, right. And but it's a whole journey, isn't it? Like, we really enjoy doing these things, and I know, like, most of our listeners have experimented with loads and loads of ideas, and like myself, initially starts off as side hustles, and then finally something sticks and you become a founder of something that really matters to you. um Take us through what that journey was like for you, where tell us about the community, tell us about how Health Collider finally came to be.
And so I was walking one day in the hills, not too far from Birmingham. It's a place called Lickey Hills in the south of Birmingham. And I was just wondering to myself, you know, wouldn't it be nice to have a little, you know, a little group somewhere on WhatsApp where I can just talk with other people who are interested in healthcare innovation, just a bit of back and forth, a bit more than LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn you put a post, people might reply for, you know, a few hours, they might get some replies, and that sort of ends the conversation.
Hmm.
There's no dynamic aspect to it, and it sort of cuts off. So I just thought, you know, well, I'll put a post out on LinkedIn, see if there's any other people who are interested. Maybe 5 or 6 people might reply. It'd be a nice little group for us to talk and share ideas and whatever it is. So I put a put a post out on LinkedIn. I think within 24 hours, there's 250 or 300 people in the
Wow.
in the WhatsApp community, and it just grew so fast. So I think by, as you said, by about 3 or 4 days, it was 600. At the moment, it's just over 800
Wow.
doctors, and they're all UK-based doctors. I mean, and we kept it to UK for specific reasons, mainly because there's shared experiences and
Hmm.
shared pains, shared struggles, and we kept it to clinicians and doctors in particular, again around the shared sort of frustrations, and as well as we've got doctors from all over the country, from all the way in Scotland, all the way through down to the south of the UK,
Wow.
and what's yeah, and it allows for dynamic sets of opinions. Different things work in different hospitals in different ways. People have different experiences. Some of the people in the community are ex-doctors who are actually now, you know, involved in various different startups. Some are ex-founders or founders who are ex-doctors who are now founders,
Hmm.
who've sold their companies, again in healthcare, or are building massive companies, and their experience is amazing in, you know, in bringing in so much depth, and so within that, we created a community of around 800 doctors, but around the subgroups of about 13 or 14 of them, I think.
Yeah.
Some of them are more popular than others. The AI group, I've got to say, I barely understand what they're
It's
doing.
very niche. I remember this one moment when people on the group were having a conversation, and they were like, "Oh, most doctors are going into software development, but I'm a software developer who became a doctor." And then, like, two other people said, "Oh, even I am. I thought none of us existed." And it's just such a beautiful interaction to see on the community.
And it's amazing to see how those unique skills are coming together, and from the community as well. Already we've had people who've said, from because of the community, because of the support that we've given to each other, for they've gone on to win for prizes for their startups as a
Wow.
result. So that's incredible. I mean, for me, it was just it was people have an amazing backstory for they thought about it, they created a business plan, they did this, they knew.
Yeah.
I was just walking in the hills and it's like, all right, let's just see, if anybody's interested in talking. But from that, sprung an amazing community of amazing individuals, and it's
Mm.
such a powerful group of people.
Yeah. Like many good ideas, it's a spontaneous thing that you just kind of feel forced to do and it comes to life. But I suppose looking back now, what were some of the things that really led to the success of the community? And if someone's listening and saying, oh, I have this idea I've been sitting on, but I'm worried about it being successful, what are some things that I can do to really be successful at growing a WhatsApp community?
There's no one formula except to say that if you think that something is a pain or a difficulty for you or an area that you enjoy, more likely than not, there's going to be other people who feel
Mm.
the same in different ways. So don't hesitate to just open it. See, I don't push it too hard. I don't police it too hard. I don't put a post out every day on LinkedIn saying please join, please join, please join. I I'm where the opportunity arises, like-minded people, I invite them.
Mm.
But yeah, you will find people who are like-minded like you in innovation, or in whatever area you enjoy. So just open it and see. I mean, we've got sub communities around lifestyle medicine, sub communities in psychiatry, mental health, and primary care. Each of these on their own could be a standalone community,
Yeah.
but they've got 200-300 people in them. So if there's something that interests you, and I know of those that exist, and not only that, this then pushes the conversation further because you're able
Mm.
to find views from different people, and you find that people are actually doing things that you thought, oh, I wish this is a really good idea. Does anybody do this, or is this a good idea? And people are like, oh wow, we do it already in our part of the country. This is how
Yeah.
we do it, and so you're learning and you're seeing things in real time. It's really really cool.
That's brilliant. And so, when the WhatsApp community started, did Health Collider exist, or did Health Collider build out of the community?
So Health Cloud came out of the community. I think within our community, the doctors who are within it, overwhelming majority are what you'd call first adopters.
Mm.
These are doctors who like the latest Apple Watch. They like the latest trendy thing. They like to buy for their own healthcare organizations the newest tools. They like to play about with these sorts of things. So, and not all doctors are like that necessarily. Not all healthcare settings are like that either. Not all clinics are like that. So we
Mm.
were privileged that we had such an amazing group of clinicians. And from that, we found companies who were approaching us saying how we would like to speak to these doctors, would like to, these are our innovative products. So we'd start working with them and looking at those. And then we'd make those connections between different organizations and different people. So it spun out of it as a
Okay.
result, but it grew organically. So it was, yeah,
Yeah.
but it filled a need, which is to bridge the gap between technology
Mm.
developing and innovation, not just technology, but innovation developing and actually getting it procured. You can either go through an extremely long cycle,
Yeah.
or there are shortcuts. There are ways you can do it in which, yeah, both sides benefit.
Mm. Take us through like your memory of that forming, because it feels like many times when we look at trends and we have experiences in our life, we have these visions which are initially quite vague, and it takes a little while for the idea to solidify. Take us through what that journey was like for you, and when did you kind of go like, ah, that's it?
Oh, that's a good question. I didn't know the question was going to be this hard. Uh,
Sorry.
no,
Take your time.
yeah,
I'm just
I don't,
curious.
I don't think there's any one epiphany or one point. I think things
Yeah.
came together in quite an intelligent way and quite a
Mm.
natural way. So we started realizing the demand on both sides. People who wanted new technology, people who were interested in it, people who wanted to see it, play about with it, try it in
Mm.
their clinics, and there's people who want to who've got very good technology or very good innovation, very good ideas, even not even technologists, even at ideation stage, amazing ideas that they're
Mm.
looking for support on. So
Was
these things
this
came together.
sorry, was this on the back of the sandboxes you were running?
So we did run a sandbox. The
Mm.
sandbox was slightly different. That had some challenges within the sandbox. It was slightly different, but there are some parallels to it. So the sandbox we had in the WhatsApp community, for those who are not familiar with it, we initially started with inviting people who had ideas, doctors who had ideas, to come in, and we'd form a group of doctors and clinicians, including those who had experience, like myself, to then support them from generating from the idea to more of a, how they can build that and grow that. The sandbox was there was a lot of value given, uh, but it's challenging in an asynchronous environment because people are getting messages at different times of the day. People can't keep up with the conversations. There's like
Mm.
hundreds and hundreds of messages going backwards and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whilst companies we worked with found it very useful, there were some challenges with the sandbox, but it probably did feed into it, maybe subconsciously, feed into that idea that we can support both sides of the equation. We can support clinicians who are developing ideas. We can support um, technology companies. We can support forward-thinking doctors who want to procure, or organizations that want to procure, or want to pilot, want to research. So yeah, it did form a part of it, but there was no one solid, um, you know, this is the epiphany, this is the moment. It sort of came together, and I just thought we're getting a demand now from companies, and
Mm.
we need to be able to have a company to be able to provide them with that support in an official and organized way.
Yeah. That's I think I'm feeling like there's this phase that most companies go through where if you've done it right, you've got a bit of traction, you've got public um, views, you've got a bit of a following, you've got people who you could technically, market survey if you wanted a market survey. And in your case, it sounds like you're in the community, you're active, you're listening to people's voices. And I know you do these AI generated podcast summaries of what's gone on in the week because there's so much happening across the whole community, and that really filters the trends and the challenges and what's going on. And you've got a beautiful style of writing and putting a post on LinkedIn and whatever you are, which really speaks to people and connects with what really matters with them. It's very simple, very authentic, very honest, and I think that really makes a difference. But I feel when someone's in that position, when they're sitting on this amazing amount of data and ability to speak to clinicians who are really their ideal audience, converting that into something that works is really challenging. And I'm curious to kind of dig in a little bit more and just get your insights between, the sandbox experience and then the health collider experience. And, what were some of the things that differ and why did one work better than the other? What are perhaps some frameworks that really help you? Just genuinely very curious about
Yeah, of
that.
course. So coming on to just your initial point, I think there was no intention with me to try to monetize this, or to say that I want to make money out of this. It
Mm,
was a very selfish reason for creating the community. It wasn't like I'm going to make a lot of money out of it. It was, I want to speak to other doctors, other clinicians, share experiences because I enjoy it. So that was the cool part. Now with the sandbox, and between Health Collider, and the Health Collider is more of a working not necessarily with pre-seed or with ideation stage, but more those who've got a product already, and honing that to be applicable towards the NHS, giving them opportunities where they can penetrate the healthcare market and go to market essentially. With the sandbox, that was more around the ideation stage. So clinicians who had ideas, who were perhaps slightly naive to the whole concept of building and a product from scratch, but had big ambitions, to
mm,
support and guide them. We used the Lean Business Canvas as a model to help.
okay.
But then we talked around each of those different aspects. We had clinicians in the community who had their own experiences around the same problem these people were going to solve, so they were getting a lot of value quite quickly. Truthfully, one of the challenges was, as I mentioned, was around the asynchronous element of it. So it's very much like having your own consultancy or being consulted in a very intense way. But
Mm,
clinicians were at a stage where it was one or two man groups who didn't have, because we ran it over 5 days, the
yeah.
sandbox, and they didn't have 5 full days to take on a huge amount of information, a huge amount of value, and
Mm,
difficult for them to. And when you've not seen or not worked with an accelerator or not worked with this sort of business before, as a founder, it can be very difficult to look at the advice that you're given and think, well, where does this fit in within my journey? Because
yeah.
I'm looking at things from a very strategic bird's eye view perspective and saying, I see in 7 steps from now, public
Mm.
and someone else say, yep, and who's very experienced, someone else will say, yep, from 12 steps from now, regulation wise, you'll need this. But the founder is very much in, I want to get this to market. This is my,
Yeah.
how quickly can I get there? And
Yeah.
whereas there is a methodology that's very, very important to follow and to understand. So that getting that across to the founders was at times quite difficult. Uh,
Mm.
and more difficult than perhaps doing it face to face in person. That's why you have companies like Bike Labs and these sorts of
Yeah.
organizations that work quite well. Our NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Program, because
Yeah.
they do that. We were trying to do that in 5 days. What they do over a year,
Wow.
and you see what I mean? I mean, in a very
Yeah.
loose sense of the word.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You're targeting sort of different phases of the problem, and you can't give registrar advice to an SHO. It just doesn't land and it doesn't work. And you've got different requirements and different needs, and I guess ultimately a different impact that they make as well. Like one just needs to get to market, the other needs to significantly scale and integrate, and you know be part of a healthcare system.
Yeah, and there's a lot to it. Innovating health care can be very easy if you know
Mm.
how. It can be very, very difficult if you don't know how, if you're naive to it.
Yeah.
And 5 days probably just wasn't enough for both sides, for us to really be able to impact them properly and for them to
Mm.
absorb the information in a digestible manner. That's why Health Collider is targeting slightly more mature companies and organizations and giving them that support.
Yeah.
And that's working a lot better and a lot more effectively.
That's super cool. Um, I want to just kind of tap into your amazing ADHD brain as the founder of this community and ask you what are some of the trends and insights you're getting out of the amazing innovation community in the UK? What's working? What's not working? What mistakes do people need to avoid going forward?
From a clinician perspective, I think a lot of the doctors in the community, not a lot of the doctors, some of the doctors in the community understand regulation and safety particularly well. Others are, and it's not their fault in any way, shape, or form, are in the community to learn and they don't know much about it at all. So,
Hmm.
very naive approach about how and why sort of regulatory processes are there in the first place. Once you understand how to navigate then it makes life a lot easier. So one of the things I've noticed is that clinicians are, if they haven't upskilled, they're beginning to upskill in
Hmm.
around in the UK at least clinical safety, so DCB 0129, 0160, to make sure that any things that they procure, AI or otherwise, make sure it meets a particular threshold regulation wise from the point of view of patient safety and their
Right.
own risk as well.
Hmm.
Because healthcare can be a wild west. Let's take mental health apps, they AI chatbots and so on. They can very easily become a medical device,
Yeah.
and that has its own implications. And many are sold as medical devices in reality when they're not. Uh,
Okay.
so, even with AI, is it a class 1 or class 2 device? Is it a class 3, which is completely autonomous? If it's class
Hmm.
3, have they gone through all the checks? Or,
Yeah.
who's taking the risk? And so on. So that's one of the things that I've noticed. I think clinicians are beginning to understand a lot more, especially those who are involved in decision making,
Yeah.
in the importance of understanding the granular aspects of this.
Mm. So if there's a clinician early on, sort of still maybe in the final year of GP training and has had a bit of interest in innovation and likes to go, has maybe done a bike health
Mm.
fellowship, and they're kind of thinking, what's the best place for me to grow my skills for the next 5 years or so? What would be your advice to them?
I'd say do things. Stop trying to grow your
Mm.
skills by doing what all doctors do, going on courses. Yeah, the only way you're gonna do, if you want to start up a business, do it.
Yeah.
If plan it out and do it. Talk to the right people. If you want to be an entrepreneur and improve healthcare within the organization you're working in, just do it.
Mm.
If you're receiving obstacles from management, you say no, leave that to us. You carry on seeing patients, find ways to overcome those obstacles. If you
Yeah.
if you want to if you want to really do something, just do it. That's the only way you're going to gain experience. And each of those times you have interactions, each of the times you face barriers, you learn how to overcome that barrier, and it's a new skill that you've added that no course, no online course, no university degree is going to be able to teach you. You're
Yeah.
going, yeah. So these are I think, yeah. That's the main thing I'll say. I've done a lot of theoretical work, and the theoretical work. I mean, part of my MBA, I did theoretical work on innovation, which is very, very helpful to understand how innovations form and so on. But
Mm.
does it change necessarily some of the work that I do? Probably not.
Mm.
You just have to get on it and do it, and you'll make mistakes along the way. That's normal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful advice. I mean, you just kind of have to get down to it, and you'll realize where in the big puzzle, which piece are you, and where do you fit? What are your unique strengths and qualities? What do people come to you for? And yeah, I agree. No better way than to just get your hands dirty and get into it. Just kind of switching up the gear a little bit. I'm curious about what your take is on the overall trend of more clinician founders coming about, and what does a clinician founder even mean to somebody like you?
So within the UK, it's an almost inevitable trend, and it's interesting because I talked about. By the way, before I say, it, remind me about this question again because I've got ADHD. I'll go on a tangent. Okay, so
I'll remind you.
I'll start talking about the rainforest or something, and I would have forgotten your question.
That's the
Um,
beauty of this podcast.
so, coming back to theoretical underpinnings, how does innovation occur in the first place? So clinicians
Yeah.
are innovating by becoming founders. Never used to happen before. How does
Mm.
it occur? It occurs due to needs, pressing needs. In this case, in the UK, the jobs market's not good for doctors. Doctors are
Yeah.
forced to change the way they think. It can occur because of big world events like COVID. Suddenly, people are using technology. It can occur because of policy changes. The government says we're going to do things in a different way now, so businesses start adapting to do it in that way. There's different ways that innovations can occur. It can be an epiphany, right?
Mm.
Incremental, and so on. The reason why doctors are doing this combination thereof, in the UK, it's a pressure cooker moment. Doctors are
Yeah.
struggling to get jobs, even in primary care, where I am. I'm very, very lucky, but people are struggling to find work. They have no choice. So,
Mm.
but they've got a very strong skill set in whatever specialty that they're in. So they're trying to combine that with, for example, opening up a private clinic. And you might say,
Yeah.
well, how's opening up a private clinic innovation? But it is innovation. You look at ADHD clinics as an example. They didn't
Yeah.
exist 5 or 6 years ago. They're
Mm.
going through the roof. So all this is whatever sort of tangential thing that clinicians are doing. It's because of the pressures or the different effects that are happening in the background, but also it leads to massive opportunities for them
Yeah.
in almost untapped markets. If they think tangentially enough and they're willing to have a go at it, and they'll learn along the way. And sometimes you have to give it a go when you might get it wrong, and you quit and you start again. Sometimes you go and you keep going, and you'll get there. But how they have a vision, but
Mm.
you find that clinicians are becoming founders as a result of that. And also it provides them with a sense of independence that can sometimes be difficult if you're working in an institution. Because if
Yeah.
you're constantly asking for permission to, let's say, change something, uh,
Mm.
and then the manager says, no, actually, we do it this way. No, actually, the policy says that. No,
Mm.
and then you're constantly facing these barriers. Well, and that can be frustrating for someone like me with ADHD. It can be very, very frustrating. I'm seeing,
Yeah.
very simple things that could be changed. I'm sure you see it every day in the emergency department. Why is this policy done this way? If I just tweaked it slightly, it'd be better in that way. Even
Yeah.
down to, very simple. Well, why can't I put a poster up about this? It might help people. No, you can't. Our policy says posters have to be done. So it can get very, very tiring.
Yeah.
So sometimes for clinicians, that independence to be able to make their own decisions, to be able to impact better, can come from coming out of the system and
Mm.
doing it with more creative freedom.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's times when I kind of go like, "Oh, I'd love to be a clinical lead of this emergency department, like really do some changes that would really improve everyone's experience, both patient and
Mm.
staff." And then the more I think about that idea, the more I go like, no, not really. I'm gonna have my hands tied behind my back and been given tasks that would be impossible to achieve with the resources available, and it's just super frustrating. And yeah, you're right. I think stepping out, building your own sort of pretty much a blue ocean and doing things your way, something that aligns with your values,
And
is
the
huge.
funny thing is when you build that outside of the
Yeah.
system then comes to you and says, "I'll pay you even more money than we were paying you before to use what you would have done for us for free."
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I think that's the primary reason. I think there are other reasons as well. Clinicians tend to give a lot to an
Mm.
institution, to an organization. The more you give, if unless you're getting some sort of reward from it, whatever that reward is, whether it's personal satisfaction, whether it's
Yeah.
monetary, whatever, unless you're getting something that makes you feel that's enough for the work that you're doing, you end
Mm.
but out of pure psychology, you end up uh, stopping or pausing and think, I can't carry on like this.
Yeah.
And then at that, you'd rather get something that gives you satisfaction internally and gives you the monetary value rather
Mm.
rather than being stuck in the same place.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Huge opportunity. And I'm curious what opportunities, well, I guess, where is Health Collider now? And going into 2026, what are the opportunities that you want to capture?
Yeah, so at the moment we're working with a number of different health tech and innovative startups, where we've had two very well, there's lots. We've got quite a few in the pipeline at the moment, but two sort of very good examples of success stories. One's with a company called MindBay, which
Hmm.
has an AI app around depression and mild depression and anxiety, which is being piloted in two. Well, it's been piloted in one practice, having some research done on it in another practice. They're a
Okay.
really good company that are going through it in a very methodical way. And so it's not like a standard app that just is on the App Store or ChatGPT.
Mm.
It's very safe, and they're very particular about how they're doing it. So we're supporting them in that. There's also an app called PAL, a palliative care app out of the Netherlands.
Hmm.
Is really, really innovative and unique. Palliative care is important to me because my own mother passed away from suffering
Mm.
cancer, and she had renal failure at the same time.
Okay.
And we know that palliative care can be a very traumatic time for families, for the
Yeah.
patient, and sometimes patients, sadly, they die in pain, they die with a lot of difficulty. So this app was really, really an amazing tool that links different parts of the healthcare system to support the patient
Okay.
and give the family support as well.
Wow.
And they've been piloted in a number of different practices now as well, thanks to sort of the work that we've been doing. So those are two early success stories. We've got like I said, quite a few currently. I can't talk about too much, but they're in the pipeline at
Yeah.
the moment, and we're aiming to build on that pipeline of innovative, powerful, scalable solutions that are
Mm.
needed in healthcare. What we're also looking at is building our community of healthcare organizations that we work with that are
Hmm.
interested in the same. So if they're like, we want these apps, we want these, we want these tools, we want this technology,
Yeah.
um, please contact us because we've got a really, really good set of organizations that we work with fantastic
Mm.
tools that would love to work with you.
That's brilliant. That's super cool. I can see where this can go, and this has. I mean, this could be huge. Um, Getting a bit nerdy about like business development side of things. What's one thing that you're really keen to try in 2026 that you think will work well?
That's a very good question. At the moment, the aim is on scaling what we're doing at the moment. So working with more
Mm.
organisations. So that's the primary aim, even going into 2026. I've not changed it around, or we've not changed it around too much from that.
Yeah.
I think we want to really build the numbers of people that are benefiting from the organisations that we work with.
Mm.
So I'd say our aim for 2026 is to build on the foundations that we've got, rather than bringing in anything too new or too radical. So from
Mm.
a business dev perspective, I think that's our main aim. I think at the moment is building on what we know is working really well at the moment,
Yeah.
rather than changing things too
Yeah.
much. So I've not thought about anything tangential
Mm.
just yet outside of that. I think perhaps from the community perspective, I think bringing in more doctors, expanding that would be something very, very good. So at the
Okay.
moment, it's been restricted to doctors. We had a lot of applications from nurses, pharmacists, and
Mm.
other people. So looking at ways in which we don't dilute the community whilst
Yeah.
building this, and the effect of it was building in sort of more people, more ideas, and more thoughts. That would be something that I'm looking at doing, but I'm not figured out exactly how yet.
Yeah, that's very
Any
cool. I
idea?
mean, just to let you know, in the comments, we've already had people asking if this community is open to doctors outside of the UK. And I've had to say, unfortunately, not. And then there's somebody else, Jerzen, who wants to start one in the Emirates. So there we go. And he's probably got his first member as well.
Jersey messages me because we've got a small one in the Emirates already. That
Oh,
was,
brilliant.
yeah. So we've got one in the Emirates already. So if
Oh,
you message
fantastic.
me, it's very, very small at the moment.
Yeah.
But there's one already. It's got about a couple of dozen doctors in there. I mean, the key thing here is that with communities is that don't force it. So in the
Yeah.
UK, we've got 800 doctors came very, very quickly. In the Emirates, it's taken us several months to get 20 doctors. But
Hmm.
I'm not going to be jumping around dancing. Please come, please join,
Yeah.
because that's not the objective. If people want to join, it's wonderful. If they don't want to, because for whatever reason, different societies work in different ways. And for some people, a WhatsApp group may be not seen as very professional, for example, or doesn't meet the image of a doctor,
Hmm.
and that's perfectly acceptable. And for some
Yeah.
people, it does. So don't force it. Make it something that you enjoy. I mean, I was thinking before I joined this podcast that if for some reason, 790 of the 800 doctors tomorrow left the community, would I be upset? And I'd be like, no, because the 10 people who are left there are ones who are still going to have the same conversations that I want to have,
Hmm.
around innovation in healthcare. So
Yeah.
if you're happy with that, don't worry about the numbers,
Hmm.
in the community. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think there's perhaps a little bit of like what's going on in the world in the UK versus the world in the Middle East, which is slightly different, and that's reminding me of the question that Dr. Rizwan submitted for us: is what's your take on the differences between the healthcare systems between UK and the Middle East, and your experience in Saudi, and how innovation probably plays into that?
So there's a lot to unpack in this question. Obviously, I
Mm,
worked in primary care in like a leadership role, within in Saudi Arabia. Um, the For those who are in the UK, it's a hybrid system that involves governmental sector, and it also involves a significant proportion of the private sector. So people don't always go to their GP, their primary care doctor. They sometimes go direct to a private specialist,
mm,
and that's just the way the system works, and it works well for them. Uh, Technology wise and innovation wise, I'd say my experience in Saudi Arabia, my knowledge of the Middle East, is that they're light years ahead of us in the UK in
mm.
terms of the use of technology. I remember when I was out there in 2018, they used an app called Mowade, which is an appointment-based app. You can click, a bit like an NHS app that we have. Click, look for any vacant appointments in your primary care centre. Click a button, put your name in, and there you've got an appointment on the same day,
Wow.
or the next day. And that was 7 years ago, and we're still not reaching that stage.
Mm,
The UK is very, very the access for patients to care is to a really good standard. Obviously anything can be improved, but it's
mm,
to a really good standard. Um, so the use of technology, the use of mobile phones, the use of apps, the use of convenience, it's a very, very big factor in the way in the mindset of people and of innovation
yeah.
in the region. Um, yeah, so that's a big part to play in it. In the UK, a lot of it's very granular. So what I mean by that is a lot of the work that's done in in healthcare is very academic in nature, guidelines and so on that are very, very granular, very like,
Mm,
very niche, very sort of research orientated. The Middle East tends to not at the moment as it stands. I think it's changing a little bit, but as it stands, tends to look at the guidelines of other countries like the US and the UK and incorporate from that what they think is best for them.
mm,
They understand, however, that, for example, the Framingham study was done in the United States and a population completely different to one you'd find in Dubai or population you'd find in Riyadh or somewhere else. So
mm.
they are looking at and beginning to develop those academic centres, and academic processes that allow them to make much more specific guidelines that are better centered to their setting. Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack in this question because it can
Yeah.
go into so
No,
much depth.
that's
But that's like a rough guideline. Yeah, and like I said, people can circumvent primary care to go straight to a secondary care specialist in the private sector. That has its advantages, but it has its disadvantages as well. You don't always need that. It can cost you money.
mm,
Do you need to go to the respiratory specialist for your cough, or can it be dealt with in primary care? For
yeah.
example.
Yeah, there's so much in there. I mean, it's clearly painting a picture of a very, very different system already, and different needs, and different challenges, and different opportunities. Um, it's also reminding me of episode 22, which I did with Dr. Hesham Abdallah, who's the founder of HexiTime.
Mm.
He's moved from the UK to Dubai, and leads quality in for Dubai Health, and has a company called HexiTime, which is fantastic. So I think that's another episode worth exploring to get to know the differences between the two systems. Lots of really good stuff to unpack there. There's a couple of comments for you. Josen says he'll reach out to you. Aaron says, hi, Junaid. He was teaching, so he could join a bit late. But I think people are really enjoying this conversation. I'm going to make it a bit easier for you and stop grilling you now and give you a couple of minutes to ask me a few questions on whatever you'd like to ask.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. I was thinking what to ask you. I was going to ask you. I've given my opinion about clinicians. Sometimes needing to leave the system to excel better, or to innovate better, or to create more
Hmm.
opportunities for themselves and for others. How what about clinicians who doesn't want to leave, and they're happy with that environment that they're in, broadly speaking, so they get paid well, or they don't want
Yeah.
to leave, that's got a good pension or whatever it is.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to them? But they want to improve things, but they're simply getting bottlenecks, or they're getting challenges in their environment. What's your advice to the entrepreneur, the one who wants to stay, but also wants to
Yeah.
impact?
Interesting. A really good question. I've not had to think about this for a while. So I think so. My take is that two things. So I think there's two kinds of clinicians. One who are the doers, who really are chasing mastery over their skill, are really, wanting to become perfect at that one procedure, that one ability, that one diagnosis, that care of that one problem. And then there are us, I guess, the change makers, the creators, the leaders, the ones who constantly see like, oh, this could be different, that could be different, and the things that interact. And it's not like we don't care about mastery. We do want to get good at our craft, but the thing that motivates us and drives us is slightly
Mm,
different. And I think for us, or this category of clinician, my take on it is that medicine is only part of the way in which they make a difference in the world and the impact they're really after. One of the things that often comes up when I speak to these clinicians is that, what do you really want to do? Like, why are you motivated? They're like, when I die, I want to make sure that I've given to the world what I could give. Like, I've lived to my potential and made the change that that was possible for me to make. And that's pretty unanimous, and hopefully some of the listeners of this podcast will probably resonate with that as well. And I can see you nodding too, Junaid.
mm,
And I think for them, the need to improve and the need to create is huge. And even if you don't leave the system and you're within the system, you're happy with the job you have, but you get yourself into either an ability to influence or a position of influence where you can start to work on things that really matter to you, um, then that's the place you want to be. So you might have heard me talk about this. I talk about the zone of impact, and for me, that's like a place where you're really positioned to make maximum impact, and that's an overlap of working in alignment with your purpose. So having clarity of what your purpose is, what is it that you want to bring to the world, how do you create value? That's your purpose. Um, there's influence, which is both position of influence and then the way you influence, so using your strengths, using communication skills and other things to actually influence the change that you want. And then the last bit is equity. So creating equity. This can be anything from frameworks to guidelines to educational programs and things that kind of speak for you, even when you're not speaking for the cause. And all kind of lined up together puts you in that zone of impact. So you don't have to leave to be able to do that. You can stay where you are as long as you find what your purpose is, find how you can actually really influence the problem, and what are the bits of equity that you can create to help with that challenge. So that's kind of the approach that I'd probably think about for the entrepreneurs.
that makes a lot of sense. I think almost the element of leadership involved in there, isn't it, as well? Because being able to be in a position where you've got that permission to be creative.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and sometimes you need that permission rather than being able to create it yourself, which is fine and acceptable. That's really really cool. Reminds me of my story. Actually, I forgot the one I think we mentioned beforehand about
Yeah,
the.
go for it.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure whether to mention this, but I'll mention it anyway. The When I was in my GP training, we had in the first week or two of uh, of starting my training, we had a get together of all the trainees in like a training session, or get to know each other type of session. Within that, we had an exercise to do. So we were split into three separate groups. Each of us, about 8 people in a group, and I was tasked to lead one of those groups. And we had an exercise around. We were given, I think, 4 sets of cards, and we were told they were all mixed up together. So, all in a random order. We were told we had to separate them into the original set of 4 decks of cards. And each group had the same task. We had, I think, 5 minutes or so to create a strategy, and another 5 or 10 minutes to implement. And while we were doing that, we And we, in my group in particular, we created a strategy. I listened to everybody and we put it all together. And we started the exercise. So, the trainer started the exercise. When we got to, a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes into it, one of my colleagues said, I think we're doing it wrong. I think we need to do it a different way. We need to rethink this. So
Mm.
we got into a stage where, in the middle of starting this exercise, where or doing this exercise, where we're thinking, do we have to rethink our strategy from scratch, or and start again, or do we continue? So that forced me into essentially an executive decision at that moment in time, and I was quite happy with the methodology we were using, and
Mm.
I could see the vision, I could see how we can just separate those cards, and I could see it working. So I said, no, thank you for your suggestion, but no, we're going to carry on doing this the way that we're doing it. And we did it, and the time ran out, and I think we managed to get all the cards into separate stacks. The trainer then came at the end of it and said they'd never had, in the several years that they'd been running this sort of exercise, any group of trainees that actually had completed the exercise. So, which is really interesting, because what I learned from that is that if you have a vision, you want to, you have a vision, you understand where things are going, you see things in a bird's eye view that perhaps other people miss certain elements of it,
Mm.
then you you should have that confidence in yourself to be able to execute that vision,
Yeah.
and not, as easy as it is, not rely too much on somebody else's understanding of what you've understood, because
Mm.
not everyone will necessarily get it first time or second time. You have to have that self confidence and that belief.
Yeah.
I know it's a simple exercise, but it affected and shaped the way I saw things quite a lot, because prior to that, I'd be very much trying to look at, am I doing it right? I've never done this before.
Yeah.
Maybe they know and I don't know. Maybe maybe they've done it in a way that they've understood it and I've missed them. But in fact, you have to have that trust in yourself, and once you've understood something and have the understanding and and know where the vision's going, trust yourself to be able to see that through. Yeah, and that's true for
Yeah.
any.
I think that really highlights the key challenges and the things that founders end up constantly working on is like clarifying your mission and in a way that you can share it and you allow people to follow you, leading in a way that you manage your risks. And I think it always comes down to people, right? Like nothing in this world exists without people. And as a founder or even an entrepreneur, if you can't lead people in a way that they can follow to the vision that they've agreed to participate in, then that's the biggest hurdle that I think most people kind of get stuck at. um yeah, it's for me, like when I coach people, the structure generally goes through a phase of finding clarity, a phase of building traction and buy-in and your personal brand that people can really resonate with and trust, and lastly is the monetization piece, because at the end of it, you don't want to end up just going from being an employee to self-employed and working, still trading time for money. Essentially, you want to change the model in which you make a living and make a difference in the world and do more than you've been able to do just with one-on-one patient contact. And yeah, that's super exciting. I think common challenges there, whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur, um, and really valuable things for me to think about, and really good discussion here as well. Nazi has left a comment saying that she can imagine it would feel terrifying for NHS GPs to leave without a clear guaranteed successful innovation path, and portfolio work enables both. And yeah, we're both examples of doing that as well.
Yeah, where portfolio is possible, it's I'd recommend that. So where it's possible to build something alongside your career rather than jumping ship completely, then
Mm,
do that. Where it's not possible, you may have no choice, like there is the case of some of the junior doctors in the UK at the moment. In any case, yeah, do what you enjoy as well, but and have a clear vision for what you want to try and achieve. Yeah.
yeah. Super cool. I don't see any questions coming in for you yet, Junaid, unless anyone's. Oh, there's one. So Farzana's asking, what would you say makes most practitioners not take the first step to give life to their ideas, especially because outside of their comfort zone and what they have trained for? What would be your words of advice for someone in this situation?
So you've almost answered the question yourself, Rosanna. It's that hesitancy, isn't it? that do I am I really an expert? Do I really know? And that's good. I mean, it's good to understand your own weaknesses, and it's good to try to overcome them by through learning and so on. But the only way you can learn is through really properly, alongside just the theory, is through implementing and trying. You can do all the diplomas and masters and all the degrees in the world, but if you don't implement that knowledge, if you don't solidify it, and you don't try it in the real world, you'll never get anywhere. You'll always be questioning yourself. I wish I'd done this, so maybe I could have started earlier, or maybe I could have done things in that way. I'd say, be sensible about it. Hedge your bets. Don't just give up your day job and sell your house to start a business. Necessarily, you can do it in a curated way, in which, like we said, portfolio work that works for you, or giving yourself a certain amount of time, in a day or in a week, to be able to work on something else. A lot of that compounds. So a lot of that, and my experience is that the more you work on something, the actual complexity of it compounds with time. So it forms a business, or it forms a very solid moat,
Yeah.
with time. So it might start off with, oh my god, I've just started this podcast, or oh my god, somebody else will steal my idea, or whatever it is. But if you're putting the effort in diligently in the background, day by day, week by week, then definitely it could work.
Yeah, that's I completely agree with what you're saying there as well. And like the sensible bit of it is really to learn the methodologies. And we previously did a session about the lean canvas, and there's methods of market survey and deep research, which has never been easier to do now that we've got AI. And you want to really set up those checkpoints where you're looking and checking, are things still in the green, or is it a red, where you kind of say, okay, stop, turn around. And you'll reach so many greens at a point when you say, okay, everything's been green so far, so it's likely going to continue to be green. And I think those are similar skills we practice as clinicians as well, because we never really know what's going on, but we kind of judge that if everything else is such, then it must be this.
Yeah. Success or failure is never guaranteed an outcome.
Mm,
And you won't know in absolute sense. I mean, the easy example. Look at my WhatsApp community. I was
yeah,
expecting 5 people to join. It became 800. Imagine if I said, "Oh my God, it's too much for me. Can I do it?" And not bother putting that post out on LinkedIn for it to
yeah,
grow. It's very easy to talk ourselves out of something as well. Just try and be as level-headed as possible about it, and yeah, but ultimately do. When you've got a vision, you think this is how I see things will work, and do it. I mean, the other example I'd say is that there's plenty of not very good companies who thrive in healthcare.
mm,
Products are not that great. Who maybe possibly use them regularly, who somehow still have penetration within healthcare and are
yeah.
used relied on. If it doesn't have to be the perfect idea with a perfect outcome and everything's perfect, people still create very functional businesses out of imperfect ideas and imperfect solutions.
That's very, very true. I think we hold ourselves to very high standards, and it takes a little bit of looking around and saying, what am I unhappy with, to realize that they're all actually functioning businesses. So that's really insightful. Thanks so much, Junaid. It's been a fantastic conversation as always, and thanks so much once again for your time. I'm going to say that's a wrap for today. Huge thanks to Dr. Junaid for sharing his journey into health tech, community building, and innovation. If you found this valuable, be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share it with a fellow clinician who's exploring a non clinical world as well. Our next live episode is on Tuesday, the 7th of October at 2 p.m. British summertime. I'll be joined by Dr. Mohammed Umerji, who's the founder of Pareto Education, to talk about building education platforms that truly serve clinicians, and find out what it takes to scale in that space. Subscribe and follow to not miss out. Once again, a massive thanks to Dr. Akash Vijayan for the intro music of this podcast. Check out his work on Spotify and SoundCloud. Until then, keep building, stay bolder, and remember, you have the power to create something extraordinary. Thanks so much. Any final words of for our audience, Junaid?
Um, I say reach out. I'm more than happy for you. Drop me a message. Reach out to others, not just me as well, but reach out to others in the in the space. People who you see who are doing well. You'll be surprised how many people are willing to give you their time to give you a bit of advice and their thoughts as well. And obviously, if you're technology companies or organizations, please reach out, drop me an email to either contact at healthcollider.com or contact at drjunaidhussain.com. I'm more than happy to have a chat with you as well.
Fantastic. There we